right, I'll call the meeting to order. Start with roll call. Aaron Louth.
Here.
Elizabeth McCabe.
Here.
John Reagan.
Here.
Brooke Webb.
Here.
And then online we have Taryn McCabe. Or Taryn Malavie Babb, sorry.
That's okay. Here.
All right, and then is Bob a new member? Bob Garrity, all right.
Sure.
Perfect. Just mark those down. All right, first up is meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve minutes from the May 6th meeting?
Motion to approve.
A second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're going to start with citizens' comments. Genevieve Barclay. Yes, please come to the front, state your name and address.
My name's Genevieve Barclay, and we live at 249 Hazel Drive. When we moved to Hazel Drive in 1986, we always wondered why there's not a sidewalk that goes alongside the library and then on to Hazel Drive. And we are not the only ones that wondered about this, because the late Bill Lewis, who served on the library board, tried very hard to get a sidewalk into Hazel Drive. We watched a young lady pushing a stroller up beside the library, did the proper thing, went up toward the entrance, crossed the crosswalk, then down, and then realized there's no sidewalk to Hazel Drive. A sure sign that you need that sidewalk is the mud path the kids make, because they don't go up that way. They just cross the library drive, walk on that island area, and then on to Hazel. And at 3-ish in the afternoon, it's like a sea of humanity. But really thank you if you would look into putting a sidewalk in to Hazel. Thank you very much.
Genevieve, I believe there is a process to build sidewalks, but I don't know if Hazel was evaluated in the last.
I'll have to look into
Yeah,
that.
well-
I mean, that's actually municipal property and church property, so I was just looking at the GIS to try to get a kind of an appeal for that,
The
so.
municipality paved that drive.
The driveway coming in off of Castellano Boulevard or
Yes, and to Hazel, across the parking lot.
straight across, yeah. We have an agreement,
The municipality paved the parking lot.
there's an agreement, a maintenance agreement. We share that with the church. So I'm not completely sure who actually owns it, but it's a shared agreement, so I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, but it is, when you said, we volunteer up at the library garden, and he counted 15 kids one morning, not with a parent, but just coming from Hazel, no sidewalk on that drive down to the schools.
Understood. Yeah, it's just, there's a gray area right there, and I'm not sure what
Yeah,
the dividing line is and who owns
you
what.
have a solicitor.
I'm sorry?
I said you have a municipal
I know.
solicitor.
I know, that's why I'm not commenting.
All right, well, thank you, Genevieve, I
Oh, you're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Thanks.
We'll move on to Morgan Sulik. Please come to the front and state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Maureen Sulik. I live at 138 Sleepy Hollow Road. I'm a member of Mooleybo, and about a month ago, we completed a walk audit of Williamsburg Park, which is near where I live. First, I want to start with the wind. They did a lot of curb work over at Rafton Drive between Sleepy Hollow and Old Farm Road. During that time, the sidewalk was completely cleared. All their equipment was staged on the road, which was very nice for walking and running. So back to Williamsburg Drive. We did Valley Park Drive, the park itself, and then walked up through the park over to Catalpa. And so for Valley Park Drive, we noticed it was a very pleasant walk, lots of kids and dogs around. We did identify that there are some tree branches over the sidewalk. Don't know what the solution or what the steps for that would be. We also noticed there's some sidewalks at the start of Sleepy Hollow on the side of the road. The other thing we noticed with the intersection itself, despite being across the street from the park, contained no curb cuts. We watched and listened to people that had came, and I'd watched later that week, people take the driveway to get their strollers and kids into the park instead of crossing at the intersection itself. We're in the park, everyone loved it, though they loved the grassy area, though it was a challenge to get into, both from the top and from the bottom. There were no curb cuts on the sidewalk leading up to the park, near where the parking lot is, and at the top parking lot, as you come down to the park, there's no curb cut up there either, making it difficult to take strollers or bikes. We saw kids with electric scooters having trouble getting in and up over there. And then while we're up at Catalpa, passed through Earlswood, which is a nice brick street. Noticed that was very quiet. The east side of the intersection also didn't have a curb cut. Once again, it's at the start of the park, makes it difficult to come in. And it's quite a shame because they were doing a lot of curb work over there. Though that seems like a perfect opportunity to identify the missing curb cut and fix that. That road is also at the bottom of a hill, leading to normally pretty rapid rates of speed. Though because of the curb equipment they were using that week, the road was mostly blocked, so it was kind of like a unofficial traffic calming. We noticed it was very pleasant to be over there at the time. But there's no, even though it's the entrance to a park, there's no crosswalks, no signs that say park entrance, nothing to indicate that the kids would use that as a cut through. A lot of kids in our neighborhood use it as a cut through to get through. If you want to read the full report, it's on Moogly Bill's website under Who We Are Projects, and then Dude, Where's My Complete Street. Both Catalpa will get repaved this year, and then Valley Park Drive's in pretty poor condition. Should get repaved probably in the next few years. So good time to look at possible redesigns of especially that intersection and ensuring that there's clear access to the park.
Morgan, can you forward the report to myself, Rudy,
Okay.
and Commissioner Flynn? Just-
Okay.
And then I'll put it in the drive for the board.
That'll be good.
Thank you.
And I just let you know that those ramps are gonna get done, the ADA ramps up on Catalpa and Earlswood as part of the paving. That's actually a
Okay.
portion of the paving project. We don't do them with the curbs. The curbs are
Okay.
actually to replace deteriorated sections. The ADA ramps there's two different programs that we have. One is part of the paving program. So the asphalt paving contractor will install new ramps there with the detectable plates and everything,
Okay.
ADA compliant. And then we have another program that we have funding through the county, a CDBG program, where we do 10 to 15 ramps a year through that program as well throughout
Okay.
the town. So those are, a couple of those that you mentioned, they will be done when the
Okay.
paving gets done.
Yeah, that's good to know, because it's normally like a very nice path down through Catalpa, except for that one
Yeah.
intersection right at the park.
It'll get done.
And then the final thing I have to say, so that's 30 seconds. We're doing our second walk audit at Overlooking Beverly Sunday at 9:30. So,
Thank you. Kirill?
Yes. Is okay? Presentation
Oh, yeah. What do you have? Just a commentary on?
and images.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if there's another way to share, but
Real
I think this is okay. No. Hey, I'm Kirill Tropin, 945 Margaret Avenue. I'm here to speak about the crash that happened about 3 weeks ago, Ralston and Bower Hill. You could read the news report if you haven't. Tesla crashed into a house there. I haven't seen the crash report myself, so I cannot describe exactly what happened there. It's a little difficult to guess. But if you look at the intersection, you could make your guesses or ask for a crash report. So I come from a software background, software engineering background, and usually few things we do when things like that happen. First, you try to put a quick fix, something quick to prevent the issue from happening very soon. Then you do proper investigation and then build a plan for medium-term fix, do proper fix, make sure it doesn't happen again. But usually these things don't happen by themselves in an isolated area. Usually it's a sign of systemic problem. So you want to do an investigation, explore a broader area, and then also do a check on your process in case you need to update your processes if something needs to be done there. So applying that mindset to this crash, so I have these 4 steps. So first, create short-term fix. So that happened a month ago, nothing was done. There is no short-term fix. So I came here to propose my short-term fix, just me coming up with ideas. So the crash was into that building. It looked like a car was coming from here and couldn't turn fast enough, crashed into the building over here. So I'm thinking, how do I slow down that car, narrow visually this roadway, maybe paint some white on the side to make it visually narrow, prevent them from going straight into the house there, and then put some slowing down signs in the middle saying like, hey, it's the law, slow down for pedestrians, like we have some of those signs. That's a short-term fix, probably cheap, will take probably a day to install, something easy. So that's for short terms, and thinking about what do we do in medium term, probably a little bit more concrete needs to be done. And then I was jogging in that area actually twice in the last month, and then I saw this car parked there. I'm like, what is going on? Like, who would park there? This is kind of crazy. And then I realized it's a crossing guard. And turns out he parks there every morning. And I'm like, why would someone block one of the lanes? And turns out crossing guard is very smart, and he blocks the lane to slow down the cars. So that could be a symptom or signal for future medium-term solution. Maybe we can remove one of the lanes and have 1 lane instead of 2, because crossing guard does it during rush hour in the morning, and clearly it works just fine. And then crossing guard also puts like little signs on the road here to slow cars down. So lots of ideas from crossing guard there already. That could be an idea for medium-term implementation. Then broader area, so thinking about broader area. So this crash happened here. This is just 900 feet away from Lincoln Elementary. A bunch of courts, Meadowcroft Park, our Beverly business district or commercial district. So lots of pedestrian traffic in the area. And my question for you, do you think those pedestrians feel safe? I don't think so, because houses don't feel safe if cars keep crashing into the houses. I think that's not the first time a car crashed there. So how could pedestrians feel safe? And crossing guard probably +1 to that one, because he's there to slow cars down. So what can we do to slow cars and make pedestrians feel safer in this area and bring more people to the commercial district in Beverly? And now, last one, thinking about the process, so just bullet points there. So my suggestion for process, maybe start reviewing those crash reports. If something like that happens, maybe this board should review crash reports and have a discussion about what happened there. Maybe someone should be proactively building these short-term fixes and bringing to this board, and maybe engineering should be proposing some medium-term fixes as well, bring to this board and have that discussion here. So instead of citizens like me coming up with these ideas or waiting for long-term planning, how could we move quicker on that and incorporate it into part of this process? And then broader area, so it's not just about one single incident, one single crash. How could we send this feedback into our broader plan for the area, for the city overall? That's it.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen,
I have
go
a
ahead,
question
John.
regarding that. Do currently, do first responders provide that crash reports to the municipal engineer at least currently? I know there are a lot of cities that do that. Like anytime there's a crash, the report gets sent straight to. So, because I know like the board is one thing, but there is
Not
also.
automatically.
Okay.
If it's a reportable crash, which means that police were called and someone was injured, that goes into a database that's kept by PennDOT
And I've
and
seen.
shared, so like every municipality can also access that data. It's the non-reportable crashes, right? So there's still a lot of crashes that occur, but there isn't an injury. And those are really just documented at like a municipality level,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, what I was getting at is like, listening to Carol talk, I have heard of places that do exactly that. And I was just making sure we didn't already have that in place outside of the board, yeah. That's all, thanks.
Jen, Brandon
Brandon Stein.
Brandon
Thanks.
Stein.
So I'm here again from the Beverly Road Association, where the businesses that are requesting immediate action on the parking situation. April 1st, we came to the meeting and we were told that a subcommittee of you would evaluate the prior study that was done 8 years ago and report back what might be feasible from that study. Then a representation of us came to the May meeting, and at that time, we were told that you were maybe gonna get a study done in 2026, and that maybe employees could park on Parker, but you weren't sure. So I'm just here on behalf of my fellow business people on Beverly Road to ask for real, immediate solutions to our problem. Or where else we should go, if we should go to commissioner meetings or whatever we should do. Because we're growing all the time and it's a serious problem.
I don't know that we have any specific actions this evening, but I don't see any restrictions to parking on Parker.
That wasn't my question.
Okay.
I walk by there every day
Okay.
and I know you can park on Parker.
Okay.
That was what you guys came up with as a possibility. But that's not a solution to the parking problem. There's people that cannot walk from Parker to our shops to shop. They're not even thinking that that's an option. They're circling, they're getting mad, there's kids crossing the street there, there's honking that happens every day because people are mad because they circle and circle and circle. I mean, I don't know, is there another board we should go to? Is there somewhere, like, we need some answers, like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've made a recommendation and we have some scopes to review from other entities that have done a larger plan. My recommendation previously was to do a more holistic safety action plan in this area. While we do have the active transportation plan starting, I think there's more issues beyond parking, including within the walk shed here that Kirill highlighted. We've had several serious crashes farther down Beverly at Lincoln Elementary. I don't think just looking at parking, just because we did it 8 years ago, is gonna solve our problems.
Absolutely, that was just your guys' option.
Our budget cycle is happening right now. We have some scopes to look to. We've made recommendations to council for some current ones. We may earmark a budget request for a safety action plan here, but commission then approves the budget.
Yeah, and so those budget recommendations that we made for 2026, it is a line item, so it's one of half a dozen or so. And I think, to your point about, reviewing the 2017, as our subcommittee, we thought, that would be a logical first step. I don't know,
Well, that was never one of our recommendations.
Right,
That was
yeah.
your recommendation.
Yeah.
We just need something to happen before 2026. Like, we're getting another huge restaurant coming in that's gonna be open for lunch and dinner.
Right.
That's known all over, they're from New York, so everyone knows F&F Pizza. So we just need some solutions to come before 2026. Even if it's increasing the parking on Colonial to more than 2 hours, giving employees permits to be able to park on the streets that are not more than 2 hours, because there's 160 employees that work on Beverly Road. And they're taking up spots because they get tickets and yelled at for parking on Colonial, so then they park on Beverly and feed the meter. You know what I mean? There's some things that can be done before a parking study's done. And we would just like some things to happen. Oh, we'll definitely send somebody. Is there anyone that's new that didn't get our proposal,
I think we got it digitally, and so, Bob is new to the
Okay.
board, so I'll make sure he has a copy of that
Okay,
report.
great, okay.
Thank you.
So we'll be back next month.
Sounds good.
We're not gonna give up.
And then we have Nancy Leverett. I don't know, if Nancy, that you need to come to the front of the room if you just want to state your name and address from where you are.
To the front, Nancy, or?
Okay.
Excuse me, just walking through, going to the right. And I'll get you right in front of the podium, but the podium's behind you. Good, all right, thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Charlotte.
just state your name and address. Thanks, Nancy.
So, I'm Nancy Leverett, and I live at 759 Lebanon Avenue since 1984 or 85, something like that. We've been living there. And first, I want to thank you for putting in the talking audible signal at Cedar and Cochrane. And I did request that. I think that was before the pandemic. And I was so pleased when it was put in. It makes my life so much simpler and mostly safer. So I want you to know that I really appreciate that. And I've heard that possibly you're going to put audible signals on Washington Road. And I don't know if you've discussed that. I came in a little bit late, but I'm really, really pleased to hear that. And because I walk from my house up to Lebanon, or from Lebanon up to Washington Road pretty frequently, maybe a couple times a week. And also, my husband and I help out at the Lions Farmers Market right at Cochrane and Washington. And so I'm often at that intersection, around rush hour, and I have to cross that street. And so if there were an audible signal there, I would feel a lot safer. So I'm just here to advocate for audible signals. I also live 3 doors from the Mount Lebanon High School, and I don't know if this was in your plan or not, but that intersection right in front of the high school at Lebanon and Cochrane, if there were an audible signal there, that would be, I don't think only just to me it would be very helpful, but for all the kids. There's a lot of traffic there, at school, at the time of school, ending school. And also when there's athletic events, there's a lot of traffic there. So like I said, I'm just here to advocate for audible signals, how helpful they are, how much safer they make my life and probably a lot of other people's lives. So thank you. Come on, Grace.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank
And
you,
I'll
Grace.
I'll let you know that we are in a process of installing those same signals, the audible pedestrians at Cochrane and Washington, and then every intersection from Calcasieu Boulevard in Washington all the way through the business district to Shady Drive East and West and Washington Road. And there's one that was installed last year at Bower Hill in Washington by St. Bernard's Church as well. So those are all going to be covered here in the next few weeks. The contractor's actually working on them right now.
Okay.
So should be tested in about 2 weeks.
Yep.
When do you think they'll be up and running in about 2 weeks?
They're gonna start testing, it's about 4 more weeks until we wrap up everything, but they're starting testing at the first intersection with the APS in about a week.
And then the Lebanon Avenue and Cochrane is not on that list?
No.
Is it possible?
We can't add that, no.
No?
No,
That
the
was
grants-
green light go funding.
Yeah, so we
We
already,
all,
the grant's already in place. It's all set in stone. We can't.
That's unfortunate though, that road got left off because it actually sits between, there's gonna be a audible signal at Cochrane and Washington, Cochrane and Cedar, and then there's a gap in between, so that's unfortunate.
the good thing is, I mean, with green light go funding, you can apply for it
Pretty much
every
every
year. So that's
Do you know when
definitely
those
what add to the
applications
list.
are done or processed?
So this year's applications already went in. Arlie is right now, but I think it would be next April,
I think so, yeah.
April.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask one other question? Who made the recommendations on which intersections? Was it like traffic engineers, police?
I can't answer that. I wasn't
Municipality.
with the company then. I don't know
Okay,
how they were.
I think that was initiated by the traffic board.
okay.
I'm not real sure, to be honest with you.
And then Ann Hershey.
Still representing Kelso Road. At the end of April, maybe beginning of May, there was police cars along the side of the road there, which did slow down the traffic. I'm not sure why they were there exactly, but they're not there now anymore, so would be good to have them back again. Doesn't have to be all the time, but just every so often so that people are aware that they have to slow down. Yesterday, there was an accident at the end of that road, Kelso Road, pretty serious accident, and again, that's a place where I wish there would be a roundabout or some way to control the traffic down at the end of that road, but I think that's under St. Clair too.
The Painters Run.
Yeah.
Good.
So, we're still hoping for the traffic though to be slowed down. Yeah, thanks.
And I'll say the board made a recommendation to our traffic engineer to expend the funds allotted for the mobility board on Kelso Road improvements. So I don't know that we have anything on that front, but that was our recommendation to our traffic engineer and the commission.
Well, good.
So,
We made it through the school year too without accidents with the
Yeah.
kids, so.
but yeah, we're well aware and doing what we think we can within our means.
Yeah, good,
So,
okay.
Thank you. Looks like we have some attendees online. Jennifer McCracken, are you online for public comment?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer.
Sorry.
No,
I just have.
it was like a new name I hadn't seen up there.
Sorry, I just have exhibits to share.
Yeah, cool,
Okay.
thanks.
So that's all, doesn't look like there's any.
All right.
Anybody has raised hand.
Okay. Moving on to the chairperson's report. I don't have a full report of anything specifically, but I did want to highlight, we've had many people come to these meetings and ask for specific requests and really want to emphasize the need for a holistic approach. We had people highlight Williamsburg Park. It looks like there was construction done to the basketball courts in 2017, but not really addressing the access around there. One that's been kind of a burr on my side is the ADA improvements around Meadowcroft Park. While those are ADA ramps from North Meadowcroft Avenue to the courts, they do not provide any access improvements to the school where it is very difficult to access with anything in a mobility device or a stroller. We actually had a walk and talk that we participated in with Move Lebo where we demonstrated the need in that area for access. There's a couple mud paths, those of us that push strollers or other devices use. It's questionable if the sidewalks on each side of North Meadowcroft would actually meet ADA access requirements with some of the telephone poles and also the speed, the 50-mile-per-hour speed sign directly in the middle of the sidewalk, limiting ADA access. So a holistic approach beyond, and I know that probably lives with the Parks and Rec considerations, and I don't know if there's time for an ad hoc addition to that North Meadowcroft project specifically, because I think it's going to construction this June, but a holistic approach. Beverly Road in Lincoln is another one where we did a parking study in 2017. There were elements implemented, but not quite, or not fully implemented, but there's a lot more needs around there, especially with the growth in the pickleball courts and usage of those spaces. I think smart, short-term decisions can happen in any of these places, so just bringing the plans up to a full approach, looking at the walk sheds beyond just some of these parking areas would be critical. And then I appreciated the commentary regarding a group or studio or something that responds to these crashes. Strong Towns is a group that has something called a crash analysis studio, where they spin up a team that actually goes back and responds as crash response team. And the city of Pittsburgh also has a Vision Zero response team. So those are things that I think we could employ at the municipal level, and it would be great to get multiple eyes from a DPW, a police, and emergency response perspective, bring those groups together to really come up with some ideas, because I think our citizens and even our engineers have some great ideas that we could do in the short term. And then finally, a mobility element is PRT's last round of public hearings is June 12th at the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. Mount Lebanon is poised to lose all bus service starting in February 2026 if these cuts go through. So please make your voices heard. I was on a 36 bus that was standing room only from Beverly Road today, which was good to see, but that bus will go away in February 2026. So with that, I will move to the We don't have the commission liaison, so happy to give the chief an opportunity to weigh in if you'd like on a report, or just, I know.
No, I would like to
you're-
introduce myself. I'm Jason Haberman, for those that I haven't met personally or had the opportunity to interact with. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and obviously I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that you all have specifically related to anything we can offer. But again, I've been in the business almost 30 years. I've been here since 2018. Been the chief for about 2.5 years, so we obviously spend a lot of time on traffic enforcement and pedestrian safety, and I will give you a sort of a new update that is exciting in terms of the area of traffic and vehicle safety, and that's on June 5th. Paul Miller's Law goes into effect. Paul Miller's Law is a law that allows us to, it becomes a violation in the state to operate a vehicle while utilizing a cell phone that is not an integrated device. The exemptions are if it's an integrated device with GPS and/or you're utilizing it to call 911, that is the exemption. Outside of that, you're not able to utilize a cell phone beginning on the 5th of June of this year until June 6th of 2026. That is a warning violation. It's a primary violation, which if you recall, when the safety belt law came into effect in the 80s, that was a secondary violation. They made the primary violation of utilizing a cell phone while operating a vehicle and also while standing in traffic. So it's a significant improvement for distracted driving. We're going to have a rollout with our Pace Yourself Levo campaign with our PIO office, which is pedestrians, automobiles, cyclists, and everybody, to curb distracted driving, distracted walking, distracted cycling, and to roll that out as well. We worked with, recently we're working with Move Lebo to offer a program at the library for those who don't know how to interface their cell phones with their vehicles, to offer that service to those that may need it. We're working with a couple of folks right now to make that happen. So it is going to be a significant law that will have significant effects on distracted driving. Right now, they attribute, over 3,000 deaths a year nationally and over 300,000 crashes a year and injuries a year to distracted driving. And so this is something that we know will have immediate effects on reducing distracted driving when it comes to the tools that we have available to us to utilize.
Chief, is the force equipped with the cards that I saw? Like the Pennsylvania DOT has some cards that are part of the warning.
Yeah, it'll be a public
Okay.
relations campaign that
Okay.
will obviously, it'll be a holistic campaign. We are working with the state, again, to roll that out, as well.
And yeah, for those that, I think the next year the fines will start at $50, but that includes some other elements. And like when the chief said standing, even at a red light, we see a lot of usage, or I see a lot of anecdotal usage at red lights and through some of our crosswalks and everything else. So I'm excited to see that come through. All right, with that, I'll move to Rudy, the staff liaison report.
Just have a couple brief updates. As I mentioned, contractors working on the APS pedestrian buttons. Those are going in, so excited to see that working here soon. Probably in the next, like Jenny said, 3 to 4 weeks, we should be up and running. Those things need tuned too. You have to actually get the sounds. The first one we put in, or had the contractor put in at Cedar and Cochran, was right next to somebody's window, their bedroom window, and it was warm, and they left it open, and the beeping was at 10. There's like a 1 to 10 scale, so we obviously had to turn that down the next morning. So that's a little bit of a learning experience. Also, our folks started painting pavement markings, so we were able to get out and do a lot of that now that the sun's finally shining. We actually, as you guys remember, I mentioned that we're trying to add stop bars where we can. We've actually added 26 stop bars to 20 different intersections throughout the community. As of today, so far this year, those are stop bars that weren't there before. We did do Shady Drive West, Coolidge, and Derby Way as well, because I know there were some complaints about failure to stop at those stop signs, so that calls it out a little bit more. So we continue to work on those and get some paint done on the ground. I'll turn it over to Jenny.
Yeah, I think the only other update I have is on Scrubgrass Road. Let me share my screen. Sorry about that. So obviously, I know residents were a little bit concerned that this was not going to be implemented this year due to the fact that the pavement needs resurfaced. So we did take another look to see what we could implement short-term this year to help calm traffic until we get the long-term improvements. So this is essentially just plans that are ready to go out to bid. There's just a few more things that Rudy and Keith need to look at, and then this should be ready to go. But we are going to install 4 speed minders, 2 in each direction, on the southern and northern limits of Scrubgrass Road this year. And those are basically that reinforce your speed as you're traveling, which definitely help to reduce speeds. And then near the stairs, where we know there are kids that cross during school, where we were going to have these sidewalk there is no sidewalk on this side, so that was part of what we can install this year. But what we can do is actually strike the crosswalk, reinforce with appropriate pedestrian signing, the little reflective, I know you can't see that they were reflective, but what those little strips are, it's a lot of municipalities use these with stop signs. It's a retroreflective strip that goes down the entire signpost that just really calls out and reinforces that you're seeing those signings, and then the pedestrian ahead in both directions as well. So just an update on Scrubgrass.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yep.
And then moving to subcommittee reports, I'm not sure if any subcommittees met since the last meeting.
No, we did not with the finance committee, no.
And then I don't believe policy and street design met either, so.
The agenda's actually out of date, the policy and street design subcommittees were rolled together.
I thought we did that, but so I'll correct that on the next
I
agenda.
forgot it too, I just knew the policy didn't exist anymore.
Okay. All right, and then I had a couple items on old business, and this is just more of a clarification. I did see the data collection, or I believe data collection was out on Shady Drive West and Arden Road. Do we have those results? Okay.
We do.
Take it away, Jenny.
You got it. Sorry, I had them all opened. Sorry. So we received data that the police collected the week of May 7th and then the right before Memorial Day weekend, or over through the weekend. It was collected at the 100 block of Shady Drive West. And basically the results, the 85th percentile speeds were 25 miles per hour in both directions, both eastbound and westbound, which is the posted speed limit of the roadway. The average daily traffic on a weekday was 549 vehicles eastbound and 519 westbound. And then the directional was 64 and 67. So essentially, it does not meet any of the criteria of the NTMP policy, which the criteria is above 2,000 ADT and greater than 200 vehicles. And then the threshold is greater than 7 miles per hour above the posted speed limit. And you receive a point for each of those, and it didn't meet any of those criteria.
Any questions from the board about Shady Drive West?
What dates did you say, what are the timeframes that study was done? Again, sorry.
Yeah, so they collected data essentially for a week period, midday Wednesday to Tuesday the next week, and then in the eastbound direction, it was midday Wednesday, the week of the 21st through midday Monday. So I guess we didn't have a full week, but
And the signs were in 2 different locations, correct?
they were, yes. Both in that 100 block, I think it was like 106 in the eastbound and 120 something in the westbound.
Okay, because the one that was placed, I don't know, it must be westbound, was placed, the placement was peculiar for a speed monitor because it's a natural slowing down of the bend of the road. I think this happens a lot when these traffic studies are done, that if it's the residents that are petitioning, then the residents might also have a suggestion on where the placement should go because they know where the traffic's moving the quickest. And on Shady Drive West, it's not where that sign was. It's like up the hill, kind of like between Coolidge and Rolliers. I if we're talking about 7 miles over 25, I know that we are currently evaluating with this whole process, but I just want to say one other thing, the speed sign was calibrated about 2 miles underneath what it was registering. So I rode my bike and I was like, maybe my bike is just off, and then I drove my car and it was 2 miles less than what my car and my bike said, so.
There's certainly many ways to collect data, but we did not collect that data.
Sure.
Your police did.
Yeah, I'm just sharing feedback from my own, because this was close to home, someplace that I bike and live, and so I just think I understand the data, and I just think that the placement of the sign was peculiar.
It doesn't measure at the sign, it measures about 90 feet in front of the sign. So actually what happens is the sign actually, we're registering the sign, the speed, but it's actually registering much further out.
Okay.
So it's put there for a reason because it's from a placement standpoint, but we actually measure it from a significant distance away from the sign.
Well,
That's where the
90
speed registered.
90
about
feet's
that.
like 2 doors down. It sounds like it's like you're talking about a place 2 blocks away,
Right.
if I heard correctly.
Well, the part where the cars are speeding would be at a different part of the road, sure.
Yeah, that section between Coolidge
And-
and before South Meadowcroft is pretty
That's where
fast.
people are
Yeah.
doing it, and,
If you get the light, or like, that's where they can start to peek and see the light, or vice versa coming down the hill.
Does it have to be on a telephone pole? The sign
There's not
itself?
very many places to mount those signs
Oh, okay.
typically. So,
the road is dotted with telephone poles. We have more telephone poles on our street than probably most streets,
options.
so that was not an issue.
And then with the timing of when that stop sign got repainted, didn't we just say that was done?
Yeah, we did it, well, that was done for a different reason, not for speeding, because
Right, but I mean, just do we know when that happened versus when we had the
today
signs?
Tuesday, I think they painted it yesterday, across the stop bars.
Is there any way we can get them back again?
Where,
Oh,
or the
we
signs,
have,
can we do a motion or no? Or I mean, I don't know, do we think that makes a difference or? I know you're saying it's not related to speed, but.
unless the speed
You
monitor
guys
was
say
placed
that.
at a different part of the road, it's not gonna make a difference.
Yeah, where they were placed, to your point of the 7 miles per hour, the highest in that whole period it collected in both directions was 30 miles an hour. It wasn't even over 32.
Yeah, just an anecdotal thing, I know that Move Lebo has a device in a neighbor's window on that road, and they've calculated speeds over 40.
Yeah, which is what we heard whenever I was here that first meeting.
So it's just a matter of placement of the collection device, so.
Who selects the placement, the police or the engineer? And again,
we
I'm
work
asking about
with,
local practice.
we work with the electrician and the engineer in terms of where we're gonna place it, and ultimately our traffic division makes the decision where they can place it safely.
Okay.
I think I would, I'm seeing poles right there by North Meadowcroft, but I'm also seeing it back a little bit down the slope, another set of poles. I think we're trying to dial in this policy or update and remove the policy to be, like we spoke about, more holistic. I would like to know what some peak speeds are on the part that I know I've experienced, if that's possible, like to collect again in that section between Coolidge and, is it South Meadowcroft Avenue?
North Meadowcroft there,
It's still,
or is it south?
Yeah,
it's only, it changes south at Bower Hill.
right, to the north.
Are you talking about the traffic management, the neighborhood traffic So did we, it is still in effect.
But yeah, we recommended commission to.
We recommended, that was something we were working on updating, and there were clear discrepancies between what we have in place and what the state of the art recommends.
Yep.
And we were gonna update it, and then we recommended it be deleted, so all that work stopped. So I
The commission has our recommendation for,
they have the recommendation, I don't know if they're gonna act on it, but do we wanna update it? It sounded like.
we can only draft up, the commission needs to adopt any updates to these, but we don't adopt them, so.
But we recommended to just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's still our recommendation.
I mean, yeah, it's still, yeah, so,
Because I mean, I know what the current policy requires, so 25 doesn't sound that fast, but it is. I would like to be closer to 20, to be honest. 20 I think is plenty, but there's also not a lot of volume either, but it is, it'd be nice to know pedestrian counts. I know we don't count those. Do the tube monitors just track volume, not speed?
They do volume.
Okay. I would make
You
a,
can put two monitors down where it can collect speed.
I'm sorry?
You can do two counts where it can collect speed too.
Yeah, you can do, there's a number of different settings we can put on it. But we can't recommend, I mean, we can't do anything below the posted speed limit. That was your ask. I didn't catch that, but posted speed limit is
one,
25.
but we could remove the speed limit signs and do a blanket municipal road 20 mile per hour, couldn't we?
I don't know.
I don't think so, vehicle code.
25 in the state.
Yeah, that's a state, that's a
I
state.
think you-
Advisory 20 mile per hour. couldn't we?
it is very, my understanding is it's basically not enforceable, or from practically speaking.
Right.
But there are posted speed limits around here under 25. Whether you can enforce them is
School
another.
zone.
Not school zone, I'm talking about there, like Dormont, I see 20, I think Brentwood, I see 15 actually, I got that.
Lebanon that has it. Anywhere there's not a sign is assumed to be
I know
25.
Baldwin
Yes, where there
Township
is a
used to have a
design.
lot of 15 mile per hour signs, and I think they were ultimately sued and had to remove those because they were below the state threshold.
So the municipality doesn't have, okay, thanks, because that was something I was
Yeah,
gonna.
we went over that a few months ago, I think, we talked about, how, other municipalities might post it that way, but it's only legally enforceable 25.
The reason I was looking into it is wasn't really interested in enforcement. It just seemed to me that I didn't know if we were allowed, it sounds like we're not.
No.
But it seems like if we did institute statutory speed limits across all of our residential streets, it seemed like that would be a way to encourage street design is supposed to match the posted speed limit. So if we change the street from 25 to 20, that changes the engineering a little bit, in
So
theory.
I think, and maybe we put this, I would like to monitor again at a different location and then get those results, because I do know we are launching the active transportation plan and want to see some priority recommendations from them. But I don't think it's a closed book on it, just because it is so close to our businesses and it's a school walking route to our schools. Like, I would like to see some more data, but I don't know what other board members think.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that's what I was thinking
Collect in between Coolidge and.
Yeah.
And Beth, you know folks on the street, are there other, does that sound like the locations that would be desired to try to collect again between Coolidge and South Meadowbrook?
I mean, I could tell you the house numbers, but it would be more in like the 40 range. I'd have to look on the map for their, like 40, 45, there's.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, would be my current recommendation right now, beyond anything else.
And I would just say that this is something that happened on Mayfair, and it's something that happens, I think that
Almost every street.
there needs to be a more comprehensive plan for when the residents go through the process of submitting the petition, that somehow they can, not that it has to be honored, but like a recommendation on where they see the biggest speeding issue. And if there's a telephone pole there and it's all the same, then why not collect on where the residents are who live there and walk it daily experience it? It may not be possible, may not be feasible, but there should be, if we can't fix anything else on this process, we should at least be able to add a box about like, where do you recommend the placement of this device? And then it can either go there or not, but why not let the residents at least say that?
I think a valid point too is like the area of concern, learning that the speed is actually collected, not where the box actually is. Verbiage, if it was changed, would need to be very specific as to not be misleading in that regard, because I think we just end up right back in the same situation. I think it's a very great suggestion.
Let's,
I always go back to education, right? Like that piece of education is valuable and really important.
Sure, definitely.
I think we need clarification from the commission on where our recommendation lives, and we can request that from Commissioner Flynn.
Yeah,
In the next meeting. And then once we have, and I would like to collect data again, and then have the street design policy take another look at these and see what we can do on that front, even the advisory or speed limit side, dig into that a little bit more, because I think there was some, I don't think it was enabling legislation, but I know we see the signage elsewhere. I don't want to open up municipality to litigation, but yeah, if people see 25, that's like their baseline. Can we need to make a motion on that, probably? Motion to collect, can do a second round of data collection, or?
I am skeptical. I mean, I guess we could have a discussion. I'll wait for the discussion if you want a motion on it.
I would make a motion to do a second round of data collection between Coolidge and South Meadowcroft on the poles where permissible, if possible,
I'll second that.
and discussion.
So seeing as the NMTP is kind of question mark a lame duck policy that may be axed, it just seems kind of, I'm sure that study of the correct block will yield higher speeds. I don't know that it'll be enough to push it over that 7 miles per hour. And it just seems odd to me to keep trying to nudge this one street when we kind of, we're just already we're kind of under agreement that the policy was just kind of defective. So it's like, do we want to keep trying to shove it through this one or just wait till?
I think I just want personally, I want the data to know and then use that into the active transportation plan or use it, we also have another policy, citizen street improvement policy before commission. The community can take that information, they can, seek out grant funding or seek out an engineer's support to design this, make a design change to the street to a design speed, if we kind of know what some of that peak design is, that was my thought.
I mean, I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
I do, and I just don't think we have a better plan right now, and I don't know what, I think it's a good, maybe, experience to go through for other streets, if nothing else, so that you can see the difference in the placement and how, like, maybe it is important to hear from residents on where they think the hot spot is.
I agree too, John, and I also like your idea, Elizabeth, about adding that block or that line to the request about the placement, because honestly, we hear the complaints, and I'm saying we from my previous position, but a lot of times we do our best to judge, and where that location might be, and again, we're not living there, so we don't see it on a daily basis, so yeah, I agree. I think that adding that line is helpful, in the placement of it. And, I am also a little bit, I think that we need to focus our efforts on the overall approach to this as opposed to, identifying one street and going, spending all of our time on different blocks trying to collect data that might not be there. You know what I mean? So I don't, just in my experience doing this, I don't think that moving it a block or two up the road is going to yield results that are going to push it over the threshold that currently exists. I think we have to look at the threshold
Yes, I
and
agree.
figure out, how to best address that. That's just my opinion based on my experience.
So, I assume we're not really buying any new equipment or anything for every study, but, and I'm assuming that the main cost is staff labor and how that figures into just like actually additional work versus taking people away from other stuff they could be doing. But like, could someone give me a ballpark number to, like, anytime we ask to do one of these activities, is there like a number we could put on it in terms of cost to the municipality or?
I mean, I can give you an idea of manpower from a cost perspective that can be translated from that. But I can tell you that it's not easy to do. It takes, you have to physically have an on-site visit Usually it will be either our corporal in our traffic unit or our lieutenant in a traffic unit. Lieutenant Green will go out, do a site visit, see what's physically able to be done without obstructing any view, without causing any other hazards. There's whole analysis of going into where these things can be placed in terms of how they can be effective. Then from there, we work with the electrician. Typically, Jason will work with Lieutenant Green to make sure that, again, assist them in getting that put up and put those in the right location. So it takes a few days. Typically, all in all, probably 8 hours of labor combined with 3 different people, assessing everything, making sure that there's nothing there that is a hazard or anything like that. So, I would say just my best guess right now, I'm sitting here, would be a way to, we don't buy new equipment. The signs we bought were purchased this last year. I have to go back and look at exactly the cost, but I want to say they were in the $4,000 range because they're Bluetooth compatible, they're able to be downloaded, they're able to have, so they're not cheap.
If it's cold too, they have to recharge them, so they're battery powered and they don't have solar panels on them or anything. So we have to take them back to the office and recharge them.
Yeah, so it's definitely a process involved in terms of how we go about collecting that data.
So what I'm getting out of that is it probably costs, in terms of mostly manpower, probably maybe a couple $1,000s. Maybe.
Yeah, again, you have to sit down, but yeah, something like that. Give or take.
Yeah, I know it's
Yeah,
that's
it depends on the pay grade, right, and all those things. But yeah, that's, I think your best guess about that.
that's very helpful, thanks.
Right, yeah, sure.
All right, any other board discussion on this? We have a motion on the floor.
I do have one question, if I could, as long as we're talking about process on these things, and maybe you've already decided this, but with school out, seasonality and time of day seems to be something that would be impacting traffic patterns almost anywhere. Is that something that goes into any of these studies?
These collect data 24/7, so the time of day isn't really an impact, but if school's in or not and vacation things, and those are variables for sure.
I think, to your point, Bob, I think in many of these requests, at least in the time I've been on the mobility board, we've tried to keep it to when school is in session, because I do think it has a volume and at times speed impact, but that does narrow the time that we can collect this data too, because I think a lot of people try to avoid the winter time because that affects things. So there's no perfect science to it, certainly. But yeah, fair question.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's part of me wants to table this to send it to the policy and street design subcommittee to dig into it a little bit more. I don't, based on the person power and its cost and the summer, I don't know that redoing it, like to Aaron and Beth and John's point, is going to push us over the edge. I think I would like to wrap ourselves around the policy a little bit more. Like, is 25 the right number? Should it be 20, which I think many of us agree is plenty. Just wasting, I don't want to say it's wasting time, just for data's sake. It was super easy to roll it out there and go collect it. If you got a speed device that I could monitor it, I'd love to stand out there in a ghillie suit or something.
You have to have a 10 per hour cushion though, if you're pushing a button.
Yeah, I would take, okay, Beth.
One last comment, I would like to figure out how we can maybe use the Teleron data, which is a device that mounts in a window and calculates pedestrians, bikes, speed. The data that it provides is amazing. And it would be interesting to know if that could be utilized by the municipality, by the police.
Anything we use has to be calibrated. Anything we use really has to come from a recognized source in terms of that. I don't know anything about these devices. We really would have to have something that's calibrated on our end and assessed on our end to really, I don't know anything about them. I'm not familiar with them. It's just not something we're aware of. We don't have counters that typically count pedestrians, and this is the first I've heard of that, so it's not something that, from our perspective, something we could adopt or say with any high degree of certainty of any science behind it or anything, unless we, from an industry standpoint, had it and it was recognized by the courts. These are things that what we have to do is everything we use really has to be backed from a court-recognized perspective, and anything we do has to be able to be testified to. And it's not something that we can just arbitrarily put out there. From Move Lebo or anybody else, that's what you want to do or they want to do. I can't speak to that, but from our perspective, what we put out there has to be legally defensible.
I think to that point in question, Beth, we have a couple policies before the commission and recommendations before the commission that opens the toolbox. Our toolbox is very narrow with this policy. I don't know what the ratio was. I think we asked Mike Haberman from Gateway, like how many of these have come forward and how many have gone through the whole process. It's not a large amount in the time this policy's been in place. And that might be purposeful on one side, but it doesn't reflect citizens' desire to see these changes. All the people, and maybe this is a segue to Arden Road, but I know we have a motion on, but my recommendation is to table this and send it to committee. So, I guess, can we vote on that, or all in favor of that?
The Shady Drive issue specifically to committee, or the
NTMP, or follow up, get Andrew involved and find out where these policies stand and what viability of them getting approved by commission this year is, because if the toolbox is gonna remain closed for another year, then
So go to inquire as to the status of commission first, and then send to committee if it seems like that should be done.
Yep.
And maybe that is a second motion after you're back.
whatever. I want to move on to the next thing. But all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I do, real quick, I did suspect that you'd say that about the need for calibration and why stuff purchased on the internet doesn't count. But that leads me to, so does that also mean that you have no means of adjusting your equipment if it were to somehow be wrong? Like it just is what it is? I don't know.
Well, we get them calibrated, so they're.
Okay, so when was the last time it was calibrated?
Yeah, I'd have to ask Lieutenant Green that, but they're part of our calibration process in terms of what that is.
So they're calibrated in-house?
No, we have a third party.
Okay, third party.
Or
Got it.
they are a calibration company that comes in and does all of our speed timing devices as well as those.
Okay.
All right, Arden Road.
Sure. So this data that I have up on the screen is essentially, I guess, we did collect this data originally when the 2019, when the original process to look at Arden Road started, and then again in 2025. We use a third-party data collection firm that collects all of our data, so these were ATR counts that were done, so those are the two counters. They were set in a way that counted the volume, classified the vehicles, and also got speeds. So the red is just showing the locations in 2019, and then the blue is 2025. So they were within the same block, not at the exact same location, but very, very close. So up on the right-hand side of the screen, I'm showing the data for the right-hand side of the sheet with Arden on the 200 block. So pre-implementation in 2019, your ADT, or average daily traffic on the roadway, was 1,975. And in 2025, when collected, it was 1,000. So this is essentially a 49% reduction. Clearly, can't account for all of this based on traffic calming, and that is not the percentage that is normal to see with a traffic calming measure of this magnitude. And a lot of this has to do with COVID as well, and just the change in traffic patterns in general since 2019 for sure. Weekday, peak was 200 prior and is now at 118 on this side of Arden. And then 85th percentile speeds were 28 miles per hour and are now 24 miles per hour on Arden. So really reduction that you would expect to see with the traffic measures of 4 miles per hour. And then down here on the left-hand side, we're sort of showing the left-hand ATRs here on the screen, but it was 3,120 vehicles, so ADT was higher on this portion of Arden Road and is now 1,530 based on the data collected in 2025. So that was a 50% reduction. And then same thing with your weekday peak volume, 332 versus 181. And then saw a greater reduction here on this side of Arden. It was 28 and 29 eastbound and westbound in 2019 and is now 21 and 22 miles per hour. So that's
I mean, I know there's a caveat with the data and the timeframe there, but I think it's a win from a traffic calming perspective.
The speeds alone, that should.
Yeah, and
that's
that data that we just collected was made prior to school letting out, so first week of May, I believe, and they were down for an entire week, so this was the average of that entire week.
Well, I think
7 days.
I think it's always good practice to collect the post data, but that was sort of, the impetus was from some of the comments we received about Arden was not being effective. And I don't want to say data fully debunks that, but I find it to be an effective solution. The only thing I would look to is for these going forward where we have several parallel streets, because anecdotally Parker has seen increased volumes and speed. Getting back to the holistic element when we do these, really thinking about how is movement happening here, because, okay, we did it on Arden. Well, I already see people making their GPS telling them Parker's the solution, and that's what they find. Or even you see some people wind down and go up Morrison, like they're looking for it. So how do we holistically tackle this on a neighborhood level going forward versus a street by street level? Because the folks I was talking to somebody about Arden and they're like, yeah, I want a roundabout on Parker. It's like, fair point. I don't know. Like, there's some funky stuff going on Parker Drive that maybe we could do it cheaper, maybe we could do it faster. So I'm hoping the active transportation plan helps guide us partially that way. And then when we have some of these other construction opportunities, guides us there. But any other questions from the board?
Thank you for that information. I think that's really helpful. It's encouraging the speeds.
Yeah, I think it's a win. Okay. Moving on to new business. I wanted to present a resolution to the board for consideration, and I'll just read the resolution first. This is Mount Lebanon Mobility Board resolution, resolution requesting to the Mount Lebanon Commission to prioritize proactive traffic enforcement by the police department. Whereas the Mount Lebanon Mobility Board advises the Mount Lebanon Commission and municipal staff on matters related to mobility, safety, and accessibility for all users of the public right-of-way, including people walking, people using mobility devices, people riding bikes, people using public transit, and people driving. And whereas the board has received consistent feedback from residents expressing concern about unsafe traffic behaviors, particularly red light running, excessive speeding, and illegal or obstructive parking, which negatively affect the quality of life and public safety across Mount Lebanon. And whereas these concerns are especially acute near schools, parks, neighborhood streets, and commercial districts where vulnerable road users, including children, older adults, and individuals with disabilities are frequently present. And whereas increased and proactive enforcement of traffic laws has been shown to reduce risky driving behaviors and an essential complement to infrastructure and education efforts aimed at improving street safety. And whereas the board supports a coordinated, data-informed approach to traffic safety, including enforcement, public engagement, and interdepartmental collaboration. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mount Lebanon Mobility Board respectfully requests that the Mount Lebanon Commission work with the police department to prioritize increased proactive enforcement of traffic laws, including but not limited to speeding, failure to yield to pedestrians, and illegal parking. And be it further resolved that the board encourages the commission and police department to identify high priority locations based on crash data, community input, and risk factors, and to provide public updates on enforcement efforts and related safety initiatives. So is there a motion to move this forward to commission?
Motion.
And a second. Board discussion?
I would just like to state that I did not get a chance to read it since last night.
I will just say that I don't move this forward lightly. I've not been one to put enforcement as the front foot to this, and I also have concerns about elements that are on the books from an enforcement perspective in the community that makes me concerned that, you know, but at the same time, talking to parents, talking to people on the streets, having people come at a mobility board meetings for the last year or so, asking for a presence from our police force. I think there's a demand there, and trying not to let my thoughts fully cloud this recommendation. So that's kind of my piece.
I'm sorry, just I'll admit my bias in this particular discussion, but I have trouble understanding what this is other than like a feel-good kind of thing for the mobility board to say, because I honestly, it's what our officers do on a daily basis. I don't see the direction going. I think it's a slippery slope to start recommending enforcement. I mean, we saw in the data from Arden Road, there was never even a possibility of enforcement.
Yeah.
That was traffic calming as a result of volume. The 28, 29 mile per hour speed limits would not have been enforceable. So I think, again, focusing our efforts on changing other things related to design, engineering, things like that is really where we should be focusing our efforts. Not on enforcement that honestly can't be done. You know what I mean? Because of where the thresholds lie.
Well, I think maybe as a parent at Washington Elementary, I respectfully disagree because I see a lot of red light running. I see a lot of trucks blowing through the school zone at 15, and those are enforceable. Ticketing people in school zones at a minimum, I think we could change behavior pretty quickly if we just target the areas around our parks and our schools where there are a lot of pedestrians. Because that's pretty easy. Like you're either, running a red light in a school zone, not following the 15, and I can get on board with that aspect, and I think maybe you're speaking to that. I agree that enforcement is not the issue, road redesign, and we don't want to be in a culture of like this police state. But I have heard from so many, for the last year, residents just coming concerned, talking about how they grew up in Mount Lebanon and people never used to speed on Washington Road because they knew they would be pulled over. These are guys like in their 70s talking, and so there is a slippery slope, but I think anybody could justify ticketing and enforcing around schools, libraries, and parks.
So let me offer something from my perspective. So I appreciate the desire for enforcement, and I understand the problem that we represent when it comes to enforcement in this community. And I understand the deterrence that occurs whenever we do stop people and either warn them or cite them. But let me explain to you a couple of serious pitfalls of something like this. First of all, there's a constitutional restriction that prevents us from ordering or even implying to an officer to stop and cite. That is not allowed by the state constitution, Act 114, which was enacted in 1981, reinforced by Act 74 in 2019. We cannot assess, imply, or judge our officers' behavior or their performance based on the amount of tickets they write or the amount of enforcement they perform. That is a back-end quota that this is implying that you're measuring. It in fact puts us in a very precarious situation if in fact you're saying it is being done or it's not being done. How are you measuring that? By numbers, right? Data.
I don't know that we have the data, so.
Well, I'll tell you the data. I mean, I'll tell you exactly what it is. But I'm saying that in fact, the only way to assess whether that in fact is being done is whether you have data, correct?
Going up or
So
down.
it's either you did it or you didn't.
Right.
Well, that in fact is what you're saying to these police officers. And you're saying that you either are doing a good job or you're not. That's a back-end quota that we can seriously get into some, not only legal, open ourselves up to some legal liability, but in fact wrongfully assess our officers' capabilities. It is not in us to demand that they stop and cite people. That is not the role of my job, of my office, and that's not the role of our police officers. The role of our police officers is to go out and enforce the laws as they see fit. Discretion within the job of a police officer is something we can never take away from them. We cannot mandate them to cite, We cannot mandate them to take action other than doing their job with what's in front of them. And I want to make that very clear in this situation, because what you're putting out there as a resolution from this commission would in fact set us up for exactly that. And you'd be putting us back 50 years in terms of progress that's been made in legislation to prevent that from occurring. So I will tell you, I completely disagree with the fact that this resolution would come from this body. And I know I've talked to the manager about it. I know it's outside the scope of this body to direct our officers on how they perform their duties. That's essentially what you're doing. Now, if you want to talk about a data-driven approach, we're all about it. I can tell you exactly where we're at in terms of our traffic stops, the amount of traffic stops we have, the amount of warnings, the amount of citation. We can talk about that all day long. When it comes to a holistic approach, what you're saying is you want more enforcement from our police department. Well, what you're saying is you want more citations, which again, putting that on record puts you in a very precarious situation by assessing us to be either for it or completing it and conducting it as you have it written or not. So I would say from our perspective, it's not something that we would agree with. It's something that we go out every day. And let me give you some numbers just to give you an idea. Because I think something's been lost here in this conversation. So what I'll tell you is this. In the 800 block of Washington Road, for example, this Washington Road, which everybody obviously has serious concerns about, and we all do. And I know that. So we've assessed literally every traffic crash in terms of what we do, in terms of how many traffic crashes we have, and the amount of injuries that are caused from it. So from March of 2022 until May 14th of 2025, we've had about 180 mirror-to-mirror crashes. So that data supports that that road isn't wide enough, which we all agree with.
I don't.
I'm sorry, okay, well, I mean in terms of from the 4 lanes of travel. Okay, that, again, there's current configuration. You want to make.
The lanes are not wide enough,
Yeah.
there might be too many lanes.
For the current, yes, and that's a whole nother conversation. It's not within the scope of what we do. We only do with what we have. 40 of those crashes were reportable. That's not just injury, that's tow also. Out of that, 23 of those caused injury. If you look at the approximate volume of Washington Road on a daily basis, a conservative estimate is somewhere in the 7,000 to 9,000 range in terms of amount of vehicles that utilize that. If you're looking in that 3-year period of evaluation, to have 23 injuries and 40 reportable crashes in PennDOT metric is not going to move any needle. We've got 2 pedestrian crashes, and one of those pedestrians were in a place where they shouldn't have been. So when you really want to do a data-driven metric in terms of what we're doing, this is what we have to lean on. This is what we have to do. This is how we operate. The processes that are in place are what we use to evaluate it. We can't go outside the scope of that. We really put ourselves in a very libelous situation. Our officers are out there, up to date. Currently, they've done 1,108 traffic stops this year. Out of those traffic stops, they've written 318 citations. Again, our high water mark came and fell with COVID. Since COVID, we've been doing everything to rebuild relationship with public and everything that we're going to do in terms of combine that with traffic and pedestrian safety. And we're not going to tear everything down just because of a resolution that says we're going to have a heavy-handed enforcement and that's going to somehow solve these problems.
I think you make fair points. I think there's certainly, in my mind, the resolution is compelling commission to how do we come up with this data-driven approach?
We'll leave us out of it. I mean, we'll be a prong in it, but putting that in there is not something that is, we're not going to be driven by a resolution. It's out of the scope of active.
But your forces respond to,
again,
911 calls around our parks where there's no
100%. But what I
parking
mean
zones,
is
a waste of time.
It's a resolution. It's outside the scope of the legal process, is my point. When I say leave us out of it, leave us out of some extra layer of legal process that doesn't involve what we answer to and who we're responsible to.
I hear and respect what you're saying, and thank you for sharing your perspective, because some of it is just information whenever you're talking about the laws of the I think building relationships are important, and I go to Washington every day. school days, and I see the officers out handing stickers, and I think that's really kind and nice to the children. But one key example, and maybe this is something, and maybe it's not citations, because I hear you, you can't tell an officer who to cite and who not to cite. But in those specific instances, the police car was parked in a parking spot. There's such a difference when the police car is parked near the crosswalk versus a parking spot. Just having that presence of a police car, like when your officers are gonna be out handing, like small changes, just for that day, like they're handing out stickers, hey, can you make sure you park your car near the crosswalk because that really slows traffic down. Like there's like a cultural change, and I'm not gonna tell you how to do your job, but that was just one instance that I was thinking about, like if we could just make sure that the officers, when they're out there building those relationships, they're also kind of like making their presence to like slow the cars as well. If we could maybe focus less on citation and maybe just more on school zone safety as a start, is that something that would be?
We focus a lot on school zone safety. The go zones are something we've dealt with for a long time in terms of keeping those safe and keeping and balancing. I mean, more people are driving. We have 5,000 kids in Mount Lebanon School.
Mm-hmm.
More kids are getting dropped off today than they ever have. Less kids are walking physically than they ever have. We have safe walking routes, but ultimately those safe walking routes, and the superintendent and I talk about this all the time, really are a moot point in half the neighborhoods because we don't have as many walkers.
Sure.
Or any,
Sidewalks.
well, again, a whole nother conversation, but from our perspective, I can only go by what we have around. And when I mean that, I don't mean any respect to anybody else's realm, but I'm just saying we operate very clearly on what is present and what we can do and what we can do to reduce that. So we do work and focus on that, but the other end of that, if we park in the go zone, we get calls telling us why there's a police car in the go zone preventing us from dropping our kids off. So look, I'm just telling you, these are the calls we get.
This isn't a go zone, this is just
No,
Washington
okay,
Road, which
but
is
I'm
not a
just-
go zone.
I understand what you're saying,
Sure.
but understand what I'm saying. Everybody has their own perspective that we have to balance in terms of how we do these things. We go out, we stopped a woman last week in 38 and a 15 Jefferson School and get a complaint and how the officer conducted the traffic stop. He was well within policy, well within procedure, supervisory review was conducted. I watched the video, I can tell you he did nothing wrong.
Sure.
So what I'm telling you is you want to have this kind of an edict out there, you're going to get a whole lot. And if this board's ready to absorb all of that, I'll send them all to you. All the people who have the other side of the coin that say, I didn't mean I wanted to be cited. I didn't mean I wanted to be my neighbor to be cited. I didn't mean that I wanted to be my friend to be cited. I wanted everybody else cited.
Well, and I think some folks are getting to that. I mean, the example that the Jefferson Oval has no parking zones all over. Your police have come out and ticketed all sides, and it's valid because it's no parking zone. But then I'm at North Meadowcroft by the pickleball courts where people are parked in the crosswalk and there's actual pedestrian activity there.
Look, we're limited in resources and we do what we can do with what we have. I mean, we don't have endless pockets. Our buckets are what they are. We do everything we can within the scope of the management of the budget that we have. And if we want to exceed that for other immediate means and measures and do that, we can do that. But we spend a ton of time on different programs, whether it's pedestrian safety, which we got a grant from the state for, or other things to reduce this. So from an outsider's perspective, when you look at those numbers I mentioned, we have a very safe community. Overall, our number of traffic crashes, I mean, we literally have 35,000 residents. Our metropolitan swell can argue to be 70,000 people with a hospital, a mall, and everything else that we have within Mount Lebanon. And I can tell you the numbers that we have don't move any needle to say there's anything that's unsafe from any metric that we have as measurable through PennDOT. So if you're going to approach this and say that, take the emotion out of it. You have to take this and use a metric and a measurable way for us to go about this process. And we'll do that. And we continue to do that every day. This is what we do. This is how we spend our living.
I mean,
So,
go ahead.
so real quick, so I do think that, this is coming from a place of the board receiving calls to action, right? And understanding, I feel like looking more for like a solution. Again, I always say everything comes back to education, because that is my realm. Like, the more we know, the better we can do together in partnership. Case in point, I know that Washington Road is we're limited in the things we can do. Rudy and I have had conversations about paint. Can we even paint slow, like as you approach the school, right? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. I had 3 911 calls yesterday, 2 for parking situations around the school. Very fast response, right? But like we have to know that's an option. And in my conversation with law enforcement, it's always call us, right? Like, and same thing with, you know, most things, like we don't know what we don't know, but always a very fast response. I do think that what we're interested is solutions to some of these concerns that we get. And while we all, I think, have agreed in the past that like enforcement is not the only option, I think we'd love to engage in conversation about what are the options. You know, when people are blocking crosswalks, our parking lot, right, or parking in our parking lot, blocking people, are there solutions that we can bring to the table that mitigate that without necessarily the enforcement piece? Are there parking spots on Washington Road that we can designate as loading zones so that, you know, people aren't parking behind the last spot, or if somebody's parked behind the last spot, or parking behind the person in the last spot, or at the mailbox, or like, what are our options? And I do think that there is space to have conversations about some of the things that we hear from residents in terms of like, what can we do and what can't we do? I very much understand the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And I do feel like we're all here because we're just looking for solutions for safety features in our community. I 100% like, this is a very safe community in all aspects, to the point of like a false sense of safety and security sometimes. I'm coming from a different state. I one of the very first things that I said to my husband was like, the Mount Lebanon Police Department runs thick here. And it is very visible, and I do think that there's a lot of community pieces. But again, going back to the education component, we've had conversations about parking before and after school, and come to find out that's a shift change. Okay, understood, right? Like, a lot of times that's not possible because there's something that's a barrier to that. But there's a good deal of understanding and I think empathy that comes from just knowing more and working in partnership.
Yeah, I concur with all of that. I think, Chief, there's a world where this is something that is tabled, but I would love your forces and who, you know, Lieutenant Green was well received at this board, and I know there was different decisions and machinations of why we haven't had a police presence here, but the community is desiring it. How can we come together? Because I call them at North Meadowcroft when one of my kids are on the playground because it pisses me off, and I used to push a stroller through there and I can't see. And I show them the solution I have. It's a daylighting intersection. Like, well, tell the mobility board. I'm like, I am the mobility board. I don't like, how do we come to a solution here? It's funding. I don't think it's more of your forces getting out there ticketing people. That's not it. But we could daylight that intersection yesterday. I could have, like, commission could have approved us, like, we could do it yesterday. How do we get it? Like, we need you singing the same praises or at the table with us. Let's go paint it together. I don't know what it looks like because I don't think it's enforcement. It's not more ticketing.
No, we're all for, you know, any measures we can do to reduce, you know, whether it's speed or whether improve pedestrian safety, you know, that's what we do. That's what we spend our lives doing. But understand, you know, again, and I obviously am very proud of the 46 officers of this department and the work that they do. And clearly I'm coming from a place of that. And they do unbelievable work. You know, the most amazing group of 46 cops you've ever seen. And I can tell you that wholeheartedly, and I'm more proud to serve them than anything I've ever done in my life. And I can tell you that you need to understand that they're out there doing really great work, keeping these numbers down to significant levels, considering the amount of traffic congestion and people that we have operating within the boundaries of these 6.6 square miles. So we will work in conjunction with anybody that wants to work, what we can offer in terms of our expertise, our background, and what we bring to the table. And we do bring a wealth of knowledge to the table in that arena, and I understand that. You know, but there are also legal and physical limitations we have. I should say legal and budgetary limitations we have when it comes to a lot of these solutions in terms of what we can do. And again, we're willing to push anything up that has the resolution or has a potential successful outcome. And we'll do that. But again, we are held to task on those other things. So we just need to, we would ask that you be mindful of that part. And again, We had 27 people sign up for a police test last time. Our high water mark was 430. We have to be mindful of a recruitment and retention grouping here that is a real crisis in our industry. Less and less people want to do this job, and to make it less and less attractive isn't going to help us. So there is a component I have to balance within all of that, and that's what I would ask you to consider as we go through all of these possibilities and all these steps.
And I think we are very interested in advocating on behalf of the police department. I know that in my role, that is a piece, because we work in partnership, that like, I feel like I often share about, I mean, lots of things come my way in terms of, why can't we have somebody out there every morning? Well, if I can share that, you know, there's a shift change that happens around there, and so, you know, that can always happen, like it's knowledge to the people that better understand why. And I think as a board, because a lot of these things come our way, double parking, because of Restaurant Runner and Grubhub and all of those things, if we better understand why that's permissible, or if there's a solution to a Grubhub loading zone, or things along that line that are solutions, I think that's the work that we would love to be able to do, is to really speak to the work that is being done or the conversations that are being had. But again, I think that.
I'll see, I mean, not to identify a particular issue, but just talking about the balance of things, right? Because that was prior to Jason coming into his position, that was something that I dealt with. We had restaurants that were doing 3/4 of their business with deliveries, Grubhub, takeouts. And then for us to go and start enforcing double parking, are we potentially threatening our business district and the owners of these restaurants, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's that balance, it's always gonna be that balance, right, of trying to figure out what's the best way to.
Outside of enforcement, or, I mean, we all appreciate, you know, all of the restaurants and local options. We don't wanna hurt that business, but what's the solution to the problem that gets brought to this board? Is there one?
Yes.
And just one more thing to add to that, and again, the same with again, the chief and I, when we worked together, again, spent tons of time on this. And I can tell you, here's the thing, we worked tirelessly to how to balance this, right? And if you go with one aspect of it, you have to have it equally across the board. So you can't have grandma getting dropped off the doctor's appointment and unforced it the same way you do with Grubhub. You can't. It's just not gonna happen. I mean, you just can't, because then that's targeting and something legally we can't do. And so, I mean, you have to understand the position that we're in whenever we get called out on the carpet for these things. And the other thing that I think gets lost sometimes in the conversation of, you know, hey, why can't we just, again, it came up in some conversations I had with, why can't we just stop people and tell them to slow down? Well, why can't, I mean, here's the thing, why can't we understand it? If we stop somebody, we own that whole situation. If that person is unfortunately a criminal in another state, has evidence of a crime, all these things that happen on traffic stops all the time in America and all the time here, we have to legally defend that. And it has to be defensible in a way that can't be arbitrary, and it can't be, well, we just wanted to slow down the neighborhood because it's been a cut through and it's a problem. So there are things that we have within us that we really can't step out of in terms of the boundary we have to work within. So that's something that, you know, I just hope you're mindful of when we talk about these things, whether it's the speed limit signs or other things. I mean, it's not something we're positioned to be a part of in terms of outside the scope of what the DA will defend us on. And that's quite honestly the way that we have to operate. I mean, I know that it's, you know, it would be easy for us to just throw some lights on out there and run around and yell with everybody and tell them to slow down, but it's just not the way it works.
So we have, sorry to cut you off, Chief, but we have a motion on the floor. I'm happy to table this and I can speak to item C after this. I think there's some concerns of the law, right, of putting this forward and what the risk exposes us to. But I would really just like it from the chief and your team, like how can we interact with the police in a productive manner, because we haven't had you at the board meetings?
We're willing to do that, but again, the reorganization of the board was something I answer the manager, and the manager dictates, you know, the organization and how we deploy.
As a matter of process on sort of this entire conversation, a resolution, I think, coming from us is just simply a recommendation to the commission, right?
Yes.
The manager works for the commission.
Correct.
So the commission does not direct the daily operations of the municipality, meaning the commission can't direct the police department to do enforcement.
Right.
It has to come from the manager who gets that direction from the commission. So I think that really, if anything we're doing with this resolution, we're just making a recommendation. Whether the commission wants to adopt this resolution or not, that's up to them.
Right.
Right? I mean, am I understanding everybody's?
That's my understanding.
You know, so regardless of what we do here, the resolution would not be adopted unless the commission does it. And ultimately, the solicitor is gonna review that before it goes in front of the commission to be a resolution for recommendation. So I think that may cause some issues anyway, just because of some of the wording related to enforcement in the resolution. That's just, and then process-wise, just again, I agree, you know, I've obviously offered previous to this to serve in that role as Florida liaison, and I pass on information when appropriate to the chief. But yeah, having them participate, having them be part of the conversation, again, that also comes from the manager.
Yeah.
So we've talked about working with our commission liaison to explain to him why, you know, we want that support from the police department and we want them to be able to be part of the conversation. So I think we just continue that discussion with our commission liaison, in my opinion.
I think Chief Haberman answered my question. I was wondering if there could be, it would be possible. I'm already very sympathetic to the idea that it's not productive to declare that an organization will do a better job somehow. But I was wondering if it would be possible to say like, hey, this month, there's not gonna be any double parking on Washington Road, but I'm sort of gathering that even that would be, even that could be argued in court to be some sort of targeting, so.
There's been all sorts of things that have been tried over the years, and you know, spending the amount of time we did blitzes. We would advertise them on social media. We're gonna be in this neighborhood on this street doing enforcement. You know, and it's almost like the DUI checkpoint thing. There's a legal requirement to advertise that ahead of time. Is it beneficial to do that? Does it get people to slow down? I mean, there's all kind of theories and ways to approach it, and you gotta mix it up and try different things, and, you know, that's something that Mount Lebanon Police Department has always been, is in sort of at the forefront of that innovation and willing to try things. You know, so I think my opinion, I think the board just needs to continue to work with the police department to try to figure out the best ways to have them be part of what we're all trying to do as part of this board.
Seth, may I comment?
Yes, please.
I'm new to the board, and I appreciate this conversation. And I've certainly learned an awful lot about how all of these things need to work together. And when you talk about balance, and I'm sure that really is frustrating to try and achieve that balance on a daily basis. But I was just thinking about the Paul Miller law that's going to go into effect in a couple of days. Where's the manpower going to come from to enforce that, which to me is a really big deal. Distracted driving, walking, biking is, I think, a real issue that needs to be addressed. But I'm encouraged by this conversation because it sounds to me like we're looking at another level of how can we go back to the bottom of the resolution, which is provide public updates on enforcement efforts and related safety initiatives. It seems to me that is a worthy goal to be reaching toward, and I appreciate the chief's comments. It's not easy, so we need to think about all of the things that can be done, and maybe look to the chief for, well, what else could we do? Because we're hearing these complaints, we're hearing these issues from the community. So get more input from that and move forward on it.
So I don't know if the board saw it, but I put some examples in the June folder of some examples from the city of Pittsburgh. They've done a great job. This is just one of their slides where they talk about the number of crashes. I think having this be public, having things like the speed collection on Arden, getting that out there, how do we work together? Because I think it's a massive win. Like they do that. City of Pittsburgh, while they're a bigger entity, they have more staff. Lebanon has a fair amount of staff too. and they publish their traffic calming, where it was wins and losses, where it was done, how many crashes have happened on here, when the crashes, what data we have, finding a way to get that on a public dashboard of some sort, I think would be a worthy goal of this effort, to understand all that you are doing, because it is an active entity. We can't see it, right? Like, we can't be on every street, just like you can't be on every street, so.
A wealth of information comes out of the Residents Academy too, and I'm sure, the law enforcement citizens academy that y'all do too, although I haven't participated in that, I'm sure they're just building those advocates because they have a better understanding and awareness of the work that's happening behind the scenes. And I think at least that when I'm speaking, that's the piece that I feel like we're most interested in, is just better understanding so that we can speak to the concerns that come this way.
So as an official adjustment, can we motion to table this for further discussion and not move the resolution to commission? Make that motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Or motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, for something more exciting, maybe, we have Move Lebo and a paint and poles presentation. I'm not sure, someone can share, their presentation's in the folder. Nikki, I don't know if we can bring that up with the computer in the room, or who has control of the computer in the room, but I'm happy to run that presentation.
Yeah, if you want to run it right now.
Yeah, I'll just take it. Can I access our folder? I'll try to. I don't know if I can access it or not. Yes, please, Joel. I was gonna see if I could get to your presentation now.
I'm on the Zoom too. I don't know if I can share
Can
screen.
you share a screen?
We
I
have to
can.
make,
You have
we
to
have to
give me-
promote him.
Let's do that. Can I promote him right here? Yes. That makes it so much easier, Joel.
Cool. So,
Please introduce yourself.
all right. I'm Joel Beebe. I live on 210 Altoona Place. I'm part of Move Lebo, and we've been working on what we're calling the Paint and Poles project. So after last year or budget season, there was the $30,000 allocated to sort of these quick build solutions. And so we took it on ourselves to imagine some potential scenarios. These are definitely not final designs by any means, but meant to kind of spark some inspiration on what we can do within the community with these like quick build solutions that hopefully would transform into more permanent builds down the road. So we have, I believe, 6 intersections here that we've highlighted. I know Seth, you just mentioned Meadowcroft and Edward right there by the pickleball courts. As you can see here, crosswalks just marked by these 2 paint stripes. I know there's some higher vis signs back a little bit from this photo, but really when you're up close to the intersection, it's definitely a little tricky, and we get people parking. See that mouse? Nope. Over here. And blocking people crossing there getting to the school. So just looking at some interventions that are out there in the world, how can we use these quick, delineator poles? I know I've seen these the striping efforts around, so thank you very much, especially along Bower Hill. So bringing in that high visibility crosswalk, utilizing bulb outs to reduce the width of the road and give people a little bit of a place to walk there before they cross the street and seeing what's coming. So existing condition, not a great photo, a lot of trees in the way. But a quick thought we had, knowing that's a one-way, can we narrow that to a 1-lane wide road? Introduce bulb outs on either side there to reduce that crossing distance. Then on the left-hand side, potentially some paint and poles there along the left to make standing there waiting to cross a little less precarious. And this one, we're thinking maybe leveraging that for a bike rack for people heading to the park. And then, of course, moving that stop sign so it's highly visible right next to the travel lane. Another one, Bower Hill and Marlin. This photo predates the new stripes. thank you for the new stripes. Here, all traffic must turn right is the rule. However, the design at the intersection does not really indicate that at all to a driver if you're not looking at that sign. And so again, looking at some of those interventions, those quick builds, we know that's a 75-foot crossing there, which is pretty big for just a neighborhood street. So thinking how can we reduce that crossing distance, create those bulb outs on the sides, then here potentially maybe some center line hardening and reinforcing that right turn only. I know this would also restrict a left turn, but something just to think about there if we have fewer people making those dangerous left turns. Cedar Mapleton, walked through there on the way here. A lot of people driving through there, trying to avoid the light, I assume at Bower Hill and Cochrane. So again, some of that center line hardening, reducing those crossing distances. Here we're creating kind of a chicane, so you gotta wind through there a little bit, again, reducing the speed at which people drive before they approach the intersection. It's a little hard to see, but here, that street gets a lot wider there, so keeping the width of the street consistent so that we don't have this, like before the intersection, it starts to get massive and really encourages people to whip around that corner when they're turning left from Cedar onto Mapleton. Main entrance, love this one because it's so huge. We can create a pretty cool community space here. And we're right by the high school, right by Washington Road, which as we know has high speeds, but PennDOT's a little difficult to get things done. So potentially reducing the width of this to actually 2 lanes instead of the full 4 lane with the double right turn lane. And then here we actually get a pretty interesting, almost community plaza, community space within that right of way. So also the kind of big Y-shaped intersection over here, we end up having, turning that into a quick T intersection with 3 stop signs. So helps make that a little bit safer, people coming to a full stop there and making a right turn versus skirting through that large sweeping Y. Here's what it might look like in the winter. Another one here is a school route. I'm just gonna go quickly, but you can see again, this is another one where the intersection gets a lot, or the road width gets way bigger towards the intersection and kind of encourages the sweeping turns. We also don't have a sidewalk here, so this kind of becomes an ad hoc sidewalk. So this is a route to school down here towards the bottom, so we can get kids able to go up and down this hill, which is a little bit steep, on a slightly more protected area, and then also reduce that big triangle-shaped area. And then the last one, Altoona and Marietta, this is a pretty wide intersection. Again, some stop bars painted here, so that was awesome. But this one, we're looking at roundabouts. I know there's a lot of really nice roundabout executions in the city of Pittsburgh, so in Friendship and Highland Park. So utilizing a similar design here. This one would be a little bit more of a quick build versus cutting into the pavement there, but what can we do just with reducing the angles of those corners, as well as, you know, a nice planter and some clear signage that makes sure people go around it and don't cut across it, to make that intersection a lot safer to cross, especially because this is only a 2-way stop. And so when you're here in this view where the camera is obviously looking left, we have these bushes, and it is hard to see if somebody's flying down that street, and they're gonna T-bone you. So reducing that here. So that's just a quick overview of kind of where we're at. Again, this is campaign really to spread the word, kind of get people excited about what could potentially happen to our streets. Definitely not supposed to be engineers' drawings in any way, but we were challenged by one of our board members to start to think about how we spread the word within the community and on social media, how we can make our streets safer, quickly, and more beautiful, I think.
Any questions from the board?
is this just supposed to be inspirational? Is that the?
I mean, I put it on the agenda, I saw this, and honestly, I know they're all hotspots. Obviously, they wouldn't, doing them in one dose wouldn't be there. I don't know that we have anything official from a board perspective to move forward, but at the same time, I think they're all, should be in the inventory of our street redesign process. I think they're solutions, and we've tried to push the municipal engineer, specifically on Scrubgrass, to come up maybe with some interim solutions. So I think if we have anything official to do, it's just a recommendation to commission to consider these options when we redesign these streets. But any other thoughts from the board?
Yeah, just a lot of really good recommendations and a nice job on, the graphics, just to get a true idea. And it was, realistic in sense of, we've already heard from some of those intersections, so, yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Thank you, Joel.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty encouraging. This is the first, I saw the packet beforehand, but it's encouraging to me to see that there are ideas that can be generated. And I get that these are just concepts, but it stimulates a lot of creative thoughts about what some of the other options might be. It'd be interesting to hear the chief's reaction to these things too. Not right now, but certainly. I get the idea of the time.
Yeah. Morning.
Maybe down on Meadowcroft. Yeah, I don't know that we don't have costs to them, but yeah, any thoughts from you, Jenny, on your?
Those are all low cost.
Yeah,
And this is a philosophy, I mean, having now started working in Oakland, well, not started recently, but you drive anywhere through Shady Side, Squirrel Hill, like this is every intersection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a philosophy that you have to sort of adopt and just continue to move forward with, and you gotta have the funding to back it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where, I know there's intersections right around campus where we're working with the mobility and infrastructure. Yeah, there you go. To try to get more of these, intersections the way that they've done in other places. So I agree, I think it's a relatively low cost item. And it's just part of this bigger conversation we continue to have about what is our design philosophy, what's the culture we're looking to create, and then making these recommendations. And hopefully someday our problem is how to prioritize this. Which intersections to prioritize first and which, locations, and, I find it to be encouraging.
I mean, admittedly, many of these are addressing turning radius, and I know the fire department's involved, but at the same time.
But also
I think many of
pedestrian
them-
safety.
Yes.
It's
a huge thing, and some of the turning radiuses are reflective of PRT previously running service on some of these streets. They haven't run service before, they're not gonna run service again. It's simple adjustments, and then you can do these treatments right now, if we had whatever funds are associated with it. And then when you redesign the whole street or reconstruct the street, you say, hey, was this working? No, let's tweak it a little bit here, let's tweak it a little bit there, and go back. Because Arden cost a lot of money for what the end result was, and we probably, and I know maybe Mr. Haberman, our previous engineer, didn't like when I say it could have happened overnight, but it could have happened overnight. We could have done the roundabout overnight. Aaron and I could have met down there and hammered some rubber parking bump stops in the ground, and but no, I think my only recommendation would be, I think Gateway has been impelled to consider things on Kelso Road. If there's any funding left, maybe move one of these up, or let us know if there's funding left from that budget item. But otherwise, go ahead.
Something to offer, and I'll offer this really on Rudy's behalf. There is a maintenance cost associated with all of these things. When you start to get into one or two, it's not a big deal. When you start to get into a holistic 20 or, plus, you're talking about a real manpower strain on him and his folks in terms of how to maintain those things. So I think that's something just to be mindful of. It's a pebble in the water type thing. There is always the reverberating effects. And I think that's something that I think of, right away is, obviously that maintenance cost and continual process of upkeep is going to be something you're gonna have to budget.
Yeah, you
And
definitely have
one
to
thing
budget.
to consider, because some of those concepts showed a lot of painting that I would argue would not be done by an engineer or need to be maintained by your public works in the future. A lot of other communities throughout the United States use that as opportunities, and I think, something that you all may love is that you go out and paint, right, on a weekend together or plant once a year on your street. And that just provides, a little bit of engineering to do the hardscape of the edge line and the delineation and the few signs, but then it's really something that you can share as a community and maintain.
I think that was the intent behind the citizen street improvement policy was to use these, it's not, they could raise funds hypothetically in some of these cases, but the city has done some great ones. In, I think most recently Woods Run Library, a giant area that used to be a trolley loop, they closed up and narrowed down. Like this, we have leftover legacy elements here, so don't really want to belabor the point here. I think it's just more fodder to get the citizen street improvement policy reviewed and approved. If it's ineffective, then tell us and we can move on from that and seek out other opportunities. But yeah, I think the recommendation is just to put this in the inventory unless other people have thoughts on a recommendation.
I'm excited, Jenny, by your input on having citizens kind of own it. And I think there's a lot of residents who want to see this type of change. And I don't think that maintenance, I can't say everything would be maintained, but I think that with groups like Move Lebo and then passing this, we would be able to
maintain and make it
feel proud of our community, like, hey, look, and that would also support the efforts of the police. If we can slow traffic, then we're not focusing on enforcement, we're focusing on actual structural change, and I think it benefits everybody.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's obviously questions I have down the road, but the legal part, all those, again, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and just from what I
don't
see
know.
in Squirrel Hill and Shady
Yeah.
Side, there's nothing about enforcement with any of it. It's really geared towards pedestrian safety to me more than
Right.
anything. And, creating those more safe zones. I mean, they have the ones in the middle of the road just to create a halfway point for people crossing the street that, gives them that element of safety. And it's really not much about police and enforcement. It's about just
Right.
that engineering aspect.
No, I'm talking in terms of if a car strikes a pedestrian in that paint, is that, we need to find out, is that, who's, like, I mean, I don't know what the legal, I mean, is that prohibitive of vehicles to travel in there? Is that a recommendation because it's painted yellow or blue or whatever color? I mean, what is the legal responsibility? If you're on a roadway in Pennsylvania, the vehicle has the right of way in terms of what that is, if it's in the right place. And so there is a ramification if you just paint it blue and say pedestrians move or vice versa, whoever you're gearing that towards. So there's a legal ramification there of responsibility when it comes to us charging people to say, okay, who was at fault in that scenario? And it has to be legally defensible. So I bring that up, again, not to be a Debbie Downer, and I hate to sound that way, that I've clearly been the bearer of bad news, but I those are concerns that I would bring if, and Bob, you asked, so.
That's the perspective that we appreciate,
Yeah,
right?
so I mean, you really have to make sure that there is a responsibility of what is that? Is it the right of way belongs to who then?
Public.
Right.
Well,
I don't know,
No,
that's what I'm
well, no, but
asking.
yeah, well, the city of Pittsburgh or somebody has solved this and they've
Let's not
reduced.
assume anything. Let's not assume anything.
But in many of these
I'm not-
cases,
I'm
there,
not gonna go
it's a
that
no
far.
parking zone already, so you're just striping out the no parking zone and flex posting it and solving it there. So I think, yeah, my recommendation is just to add it to the inventory. Any other final thoughts?
I do, the point that was just brought up, there is a term in the PA vehicle code, pedestrian plaza, which I didn't read the definition, but it seems like some of these might meet that definition. Anyway, so I kind of view the poles as like a temporary measure to like as I believe you alluded to earlier. You build it and then you run it for a while and then maybe hardscape it if the design works out. This reminds me, the past month I've actually been watching like a ton of traffic engineering webinars, and this actually reminds me of the one that it was actually by a pavement engineer. It was a very unique one because it was multidisciplinary. He was a pavement engineer. He was doing a webinar about pavement maintenance and synergizing with street reconfiguration. And he was saying, look, my department, instead of, we resurface a lot, which is just putting a thin layer of asphalt stuff on top of the street instead of milling and paving or a total reconstruction. He's like, we take that opportunity to repaint every street. So we've built a bajillion miles of bike lanes in however many years. And then further down the line, we will come back and we'll start adding like sidewalks and stuff where we'll like do the full road diet. So this, the stuff like this makes me think of some sort of holistic strategy like that.
Yeah.
We need to build the cycle and
Agreed.
yeah,
Okay.
be less ad hoc.
I don't think any formal recommendation right now, and I'm happy to table item C because it was more related to item A. Really, unless there's other discussion, I would like to announce the next board meeting, Tuesday, July 2nd. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, while we have you here, Chief, and thank you so much for coming in. And by the way, I did see a cop. I did my morning walk on Cedar this morning.
They're out there.
In the parking lot by the concession stand, so totally there this morning. Anyway, but one question, since we have some Beverly Hills, Beverly Road, it's late, people here, like, about the parking enforcement. I mean, do you have just like a quick summary of like how that's being done? And I know it's like a 2-hour thing, and if we don't
Yeah, I
have to
mean,
do
I
all that.
think the short answer is yes, it's being done. However, there's a lot of moving parts in that one in terms of, you mentioned, I think you mentioned the employees, that being a conundrum that in their world in terms of having to park that many employees to actually run those businesses. So, I mean, we continually have parking enforcement during the day down there. We continually field complaints for specific incidents down there in terms of people who have issues. I know it's come up about, making people move at certain points and those kinds of things. Again, within the areas we can control, we're doing our best to do that, so.
As it stands now, like you said,
The
as it is now.
current parameters that exist,
Yeah.
correct. And again, it's a space, it's a whole lot of things. But
Right.
it's, within the tool we have right now,
Yeah.
we're out there and doing things as best we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, but it's good to hear from Jen again, with, the forthcoming restaurant, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
going to only
No,
grow.
it's, I mean, I try and eat lunch down here all the time and drive around. I do the same thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just,
We were in Mount Lebanon Mag together.
Yeah, right, I was gonna say, we were there, I've got photographs, Seth and I had a wonderful dialogue and conversation, so, yeah.
Just keep that going, that's all there is, yeah.
We'll continue that.
You can only do so much, right? Like there's, again, conversation around solutions to this issue is like a parking structure, which is so much money and cost and space and everything. It's the same thing on Washington Road, right? There's a parking structure, but like that's,
Yeah,
whether you
it's a
choose
lot
to
of
use it or
layers.
not. It is, right? When you're talking about like, well, what's the solution?
Because there's only one, your officers enforce, but there's only one parking, so then we have to ask, Mr. Quealy to add another parking enforcement, which comes with a budget, and I know Beverly Road folks don't want to hear that, but I think solutions like Joel presented, the active transportation plan, these other elements where we can try to tackle more things than just, because we can't tackle just parking. I hate to say it's a good problem to have, but there's a demand there, and the demand is good, but I can feel for those folks. Don't have an answer right now because we don't have unlimited funds for a study. I mean, a study ballpark, commission put $80,000 towards an active transportation plan. I don't know what the parking study costs, but you're starting at 50,000 and going up. Like, it just takes time and budget. And we did recommend a holistic study of the Beverly Road and Lincoln Elementary area to be prioritized. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. John?
It does seem to me that there are several distinct problems. Like there's the general parking capacity. Maybe there's a problem with people who can't park further away, so deliveries and handicap spots. But it's the employee thing is a big thing. That seems like it might be able to be split off from any sort of study, maybe. I don't know. just find a solution for, a solution and just a framework for employees to park.
From my understanding, employee permits is another enforcement thing. And so you're still tapping into that same bucket, but you're also logistically monitoring permits and it's person power. But that's my understanding of it. But yeah, maybe we need to sit down with Mr. Quealy to understand parking enforcement and what their capabilities are, because the police don't have like license plate readers installed in the vehicles, or do you?
No,
Yeah.
parking has one, but again, they're limited with manpower. You know, their daytime capacity really gets exceeded very quickly in terms of their ability to ticket a whole lot of people. Again, they're in one business district, then they've got to go to the other. So it's, there are limitations from a manpower standpoint. From the LPR perspective, they use it typically to electronically chalk vehicles mostly, is what they're doing with those LPRs you see on that parking car. And then during the day, we don't use, the LPRs aren't something we employ from a parking perspective.
The time parking, in my experience, just makes it so complicated.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it just, because you gotta do it, then you gotta go back, and then, you know, it's just.
Well, and 2-hour parking there is a response to, I imagine, the private residences, right? They don't want.
That's the
But
balance,
at the same
right?
time, they're probably people are parking there all day because you can't enforce it. And it's just this revolving cycle. So,
We've had business owners complain too, actually, about the same thing. So
hanging out
yeah,
meters and
they're-
yeah.
because they want new customers coming in as well, so it's not only, it really is. We've had,
Please, everybody.
yeah, I mean, it's a thing, it's definitely a thing.
All right, well, I don't think we'll solve it tonight, Chief. I appreciate your attention and commentary and everybody's commentary, but our next meeting is July 2nd.
Seth, before you wrap up, just so I like to get my bearings on a subject before coming to a meeting, what was that bullet point C going to be?
Look at things to remove from enforcement that aren't enforceable now, basically. Like, what do we have in our vehicle code that isn't enforceable or are like jaywalking is, I know some people here think it is enforceable and necessary, but it's also a rule that came from a different time. And have we actually enforced jaywalking consistently, or are we able to enforce jaywalking consistently? The presence of jaywalking often means that people feel safe enough to do it, but I know there's risks as well. So looking at because we can't enforce, there's many things on the books right now we're not enforcing anyways.
So this is street design, you're talking about
Yes.
enforcement. Are you talking about just
Policy.
general municipal code or?
Yeah, general street code, like what is in there, the crosswalk policy, these things we aren't even putting forward right now, there's just policy all over the place. How do we bring them to less policy? Because policy is not often enforceable or have any teeth, was really the impetus of that.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to butt in.
No, understood. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Alright.
Beth,
Yes.
am I allowed to come back to the second meeting?
You are, Bob. Please and thank you.
And then I would have never seen another
I get more emails.
I'm sure, because
Bring up paper, I get all these things about engineering.
yeah, you're like, please stop
Yeah,
putting
I'm
me
like,
on this.
So,